Hello, this is Thomas Bartke, and I want to record this video to give a little tech tips for users that are new to Zoom meetings. I noticed that a whole bunch of people are now using Zoom for online classes, for teaching school meetings that were normally held in person. And there is a bit of a internet traffic health issue that comes into play when so many people now use a technology that requires quite a bit of bandwidth in general. And it affects the internet as a whole, but it also affects your individual Zoom meetings. And I wanted to just record this to give you some tips on certain settings that you can choose in preparation for your Zoom meetings that can actually help the quality and performance of your Zoom meeting as you go. And it will actually also help everybody's Zoom meetings if we all kind of practice these best practices in terms of bandwidth preservation. So I'm here I have a pro account, so maybe some of the tips that I'm about to give may not apply to your account if you have a basic free account, but who knows, maybe you have a pro account or you have an upgraded account where Zoom provides through your school access to some of the more advanced features that I'm going to show. So kind of just follow along and see what you can grasp from this. So this here is the Zoom app that I've downloaded, and this is a much easier way to manage your access to your meetings and things like that than logging into Zoom with your browser. And you probably have that already done, because that's kind of something that Zoom automatically encourages. And so I'm just going to assume that you already have that. So let's go over to the settings. When you click here in the settings, so I clicked up here in my profile icon, and you see here my email that's attached to this on my account level. And then here I can click on settings. When I click on settings, it takes me over to this place. It actually opens up in a browser, and it asks me to log into the browser, and then I'm here. And so then there are different things that you can access from here. So here, the profile, you can manage your meetings, you can have recurring meetings that you have scheduled with meeting IDs that stay the same. And again, these features may just be part of the pro account. I'm not quite sure if your account level will have that available, where you can schedule and leave open specific meeting IDs for certain meetings that you have recurring over time. And then you can, configure the recordings so that let's go through this, because the recordings is something pretty interesting, because you can have cloud recordings. They are limited. There's limits to the account size, but you can also record your calls locally. And with those local recordings, they are recorded to your local hard drive, and then you can later upload them to your YouTube channel or whatever else you use to distribute calls for later consumption. Generally speaking, local recordings are a more economic way to handle recordings, but then you have to distribute them on your own. And cloud recordings, if you choose that, you're going to run out of space in your Zoom account pretty quickly. Okay, so let's go to the settings that I really want to mention with regards to conserving bandwidth. So here are some presets that affect what happens when participants join the meeting. And here's how this works. So host video, you can preset these with these settings here if the host video or the participants video are on by default when they join the meeting. Okay, I have my defaults set to off. That means the individual videos of both the host and the participants are going to be off when you join the meeting. And for myself, I prefer this just because Who knows if I'm always exactly ready for video when I join the meeting, and so I prefer to have control over this so I can turn on the video when I'm ready. For the participants video, I think it's very critical to have this disabled by default, because who the heck knows what your participants look like when they turn into the meeting. And I would probably suggest that they don't necessarily expect instant exposure when they log into the meeting. So I have this off by default, and as the host of the video, you can control this. You can enable video for all participants immediately and turn it on. You can also have participants turn video on individually on their end. You can turn participants' video on from the host if the video is connected on the participant side. So there are different ways to control all this, but I think it's a good practice to not expose the participants instantly when they join. This also contributes to bandwidth bandwidth conservation, right? Because video consumes far more bandwidth than being logged in with just the audio. And you will see that I'm going to show you some more settings further down the line that can improve that, even if you turn participants' videos on over the course of the call. But when it's turned off, you're going to have much less bandwidth used, and that means your connection will be better on the audio side of things. So in order to establish things and just kind of get the meeting going, see who all is in and so forth, it can really help when you start out with videos turned off, make sure that everybody can hear, and then you go from there and choose which video you need and which video you want to turn on. Join before host, I always have this turned off. That's particularly important for recurring meetings, because when you have a recurring meeting that has fixed meeting IDs, then if you enable this feature right here, you actually open the room permanently. And that means that participants who have the link can theoretically join your meeting and meet with one another while you, the host, is not even there and not even aware that the meeting is going on. So keep this turned off at all times to protect the meeting ID, particularly important for recurring meetings, so that the meeting ID is not accessible without you. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these. This is a good one. Only authenticated users can join meetings. If you select this, if you enable this feature, that means that the link that you're going to send out has an authentication, like a password. And the password is normally automatically entered when they click the link that you email out, but it can also be manually entered if they have the information in the text that you send with the email. So this can maybe be a little bit of a barrier of entry if you have people who are not familiar, who don't understand how this authentication process works, but it's designed to prevent users from entering that don't have the original email that you sent out, which includes the password in it. So it doesn't require password authentication if you click on that invitation email. And so that means if you just keep track and make sure that the invitation email stays private, that means only the people who are invited can actually join, and you will never have a problem with any strangers joining or people joining that you don't want there. Of course, you have to protect that original invite email to make sure that doesn't get out there, right? Because if you publicly post this on Twitter, then the authentication feature is all for naught, because then everybody who has the link can just automatically get authenticated. Okay, so that all password stuff is, there's some fine detailed features in here. Okay, this is the next one here. Mute participants upon entry. So that's also pretty good to kind of protect the integrity of the meeting, particularly in the beginning. And it's also good to protect the kind of privacy of the people joining. You imagine you have a meeting and it's scheduled, and you started it with the people who are there, and now people come in and join as you are in progress of the meeting already. If the microphone is on by default for every new user that joins, then you're going to have an audible disturbance every time someone comes late and joins the meeting later on. So I would, for like teaching meetings type situations, I would generally suggest to enable this and put mute participants upon entry on. So the default is that this is off. That means the microphones are turned on, right? So make sure you understand what the settings mean. Okay. That's all good. Chat is enabled. That's usually a good thing. That way you can communicate with participants who have maybe problems with their audio, or maybe they don't have a microphone. And so private chat, this is also an interesting feature, right? You can disable that. So private chat allows meeting participants to send private one-on-one messages to each other. So that's kind of like if you imagine a school or classroom type situation, that's like having private conversations going on in the classroom while you're trying to teach. So that's not a good thing in general, right? So I would generally, for a school classroom type meeting, I would generally suggest to disable that and then have only the public chat option enabled. Now with that, that's like, if they chat with that, that's like yelling out in the classroom across to other people, right? But at least you see what's happening, and you can actually control that. You can mute the chat for everyone, so they can't make that classroom noise in public if that's the situation. Okay, so I'm going to put this back to what I had here. Play sound when participants join or leave. That's a feature that I have generally disabled. Again, it just makes for additional disturbances if people come in and out of the room before or after the meeting has already started. Okay, I think that's pretty much all in here. I'm going to see. Okay, so I brought up a meeting here. I started a meeting in Zoom because I wanted to try to show you some settings inside here, because there are some things. They're actually, you can't really see them unless you have. Yeah, you can't really see these settings well. Okay, yeah, so here you can do some things here. You see how I got there, right? So I got there, whoops, oh la la. Ooh la 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 la. There's too much clicking. Okay, so I got there by hovering over this main meeting. Then I went to manage participants. And okay, it's popped out now. It's not usually popped out. Let me close it here so it pops the way that it usually does. So now when you click on manage, merge to window. So there you go. This is how it normally looks, right? So it pops out like this. Let me close it. So when you click on manage participants, it opens like this. And then you see the list of participants here. And this is where you can individually turn on cameras, turn on microphones, mute microphones, and then you can also mute all and unmute all if you want to open the room or close the room and close everything down like this. Chat opens in a new window like this, so you can see what chat is going on here and participate in that as well. And here I think you can you can see here, you can block the chat altogether, so no one can chat. And you can see here, so these are for settings. Host only allows the host to send chat messages. Everyone publicly allows everyone to put messages into the chat, and everyone can see it. And this is everyone publicly and privately. That allows messages also between participants privately, which I recommended to turn that off generally in the settings. Okay, So you can merge this to meeting window. That way it shows up here, right? This is the chat now. So you can have everything in one view. You don't have to juggle multiple windows. If you just have one screen, this might be an easier way to handle that. So one thing that is not easy to demonstrate without having actually other people in the meeting. Let me do this by just showing you some pictures here of how the different settings affect the session. And this goes back to what kind of video functionality you can and should not enable. So there are video settings when you have a session where you want to see your audiences, when you want to see your students, when you want to have them all available. You can make it so that the video screens from all participants are tiled on the window like this, right? So let me open this here. So this looks like, I just wanted to have the image in a new tab. Okay, there you go. So this is, who knows what meeting this is, but this is an example for all participants showing in a tiled way in your session, right? That's how it shows up. And this consumes quite a bit of bandwidth because everyone's video is updating in real time all the time, albeit in reduced quality. So it usually is okay. It kind of depends on how many participants you have. And usually for some time in a meeting when you just get started and you make sure that everyone's there, this is an appropriate setting. But usually later on, you might want to change that and just mute all the videos, or get rid of the video altogether. And you can see here these icons here. That means they show the name, and that shows who is muted and who's unmuted. So here Elizabeth Swan is unmuted, and you would hear that, and you can also actually access the controls and mute and unmute videos, microphones, right from this screen here. Now, the other view that is kind of seems to be the default is going to come out more like this. Let me see if I can open this in a new tab so it's big enough. Okay, so this is the view that is kind of the default. Or one of the defaults, and what that means is there's one video here, one screen of one participant that is emphasized, that is large, right? And then you can see the other participants up here in the bar up on top, and you can scroll through them if you want to kind of scan along who's there and who's muted, who's unmuted, and things like that. And this view is good because it emphasizes you while it allows you to keep track of what else is going on, right? So that's how this works. But there's one additional setting, and that is that automatically whoever talks is going to pop up in this larger screen and push to the foreground, which is good for video conferencing when you have individual speakers or people who communicate at a time, and then whoever speaks is the one who comes into the forefront of the attention. That functionality is also enabled by default when the view is slightly different. The other kind of default view is you just have one big video, which is normally the host, the presenter, and you don't have this bar here with the other participants at all, but you still have the setting enabled that brings the speaker, the current speaker, out in front. So what happens there is the host is the big screen, the only video screen by default. But when someone else speaks, then that person's video comes to the view, and the host's video goes away. Okay. Now here's a combination of settings that makes this rather unusable and disturbing, and that unfortunately is the default setting. So if you don't change anything, that's what you're gonna get. And that is the situation that, number one, your participants' videos are enabled, so they're on. Number two, your participants' microphones are enabled, open by default. And then this setting is on by default that emphasizes the speaker's video into the foreground. So what you get with this combination of default settings is that every time someone makes a little noise on their microphone, or coughs, or clears their throat, or whatever, or any noise that is picked up by the individual participant's microphone, is going to trigger that screen is going to pop into the front, and the actual speaker, the host video, is going to disappear. And also, so that's a bad side effect, obviously, right? But also what that does, it consumes an extreme amount of bandwidth, because every time another video is shown in full screen, that video content has to be rendered new and consume all the bandwidth that's there. So if you have that setting, that trifecta of bad defaults set, you're going to experience bandwidth issues, and you're going to get messages that will say your bandwidth is, your call is unstable and things like that. And it's just because of these default settings. So that's the main reason why I'm making this video, is to allow you to understand that and control these settings, control these situations by controlling the settings in advance properly. So I'm sorry I can't show you exactly. Well, let's see. Let me make a slightly different setup. Okay, so here we go. I made a session where I am in my own video, and now I see myself twice here. That's because I'm logged in from another device, and this is the device that is my main device here, the computer that I'm using to make this video. And what happens here? Okay, so speaker view, that is the feature where my speaker is emphasized, right? And okay, so this is confusing, because I can't start this video here. This is my computer that I'm recording this video on, but I'm using a different program to record the video, so I can record Zoom. But that means at the same time I cannot enable the video in Zoom, because then there's a conflict between two apps trying to access the same camera. Okay, so this is now very confusing, because I'm talking, but I'm also seeing myself in this video, right? So I demonstrate. So the strange thing with that is that I'm popped in here, even though, okay, I must be the speaker here somehow. Make host, stop video. So you can do all kinds of things here, right? So and that's really what I wanted to show you with that. You can do all kinds of things here to control what's going on. You can stop the video of this person here, and that's that person. You can turn it back on, ask to start video, and then the user needs to confirm that, and there is the user again. So now you get the point, right? So this is my second user, and this here is the host. The yellow image is the host. Okay, so now let's go back to this. Whoa, that's full screen. No, that's not it. Okay, gallery view and speaker view. Those are the two. And with speaker view, I'm looking for the tiled view. Maybe the tiled view is not available here. No, gallery view is the tiled view. So when you have a whole bunch of participants, this whole screen will fill up, so that eventually it'll all look like this, right? Okay. So, and when you have the speaker view selected and you have the microphones open, that's when each speaker will pop in as they make noises. I can't demonstrate it here because I don't have a way to enable the microphone or the camera for the same device that I'm using to record this video. Okay, so I hope this is not too confusing, but anyway, that's the explanation. And so again, the remedy for all of this is, and I'm going to turn this off now. So there you go. So we can actually focus on what I'm talking about. So the remedy to this, again, is to make sure that everybody is muted. That helps a lot. And then if you have some bandwidth issues in general, there's also a big remedy is to just make sure that the videos are turned off for the individual participants. Okay, so that's it. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any individual questions. I'm very familiar with Zoom because I'm using it in my business, for my business all the time. And I'm happy to help you out if you have any questions or need any help with it, setting it up for yourself or for your school or whatever your situation might be. Just reach out and stay safe and stay sane in this crazy situation of lockdown. And Zoom calls are one way of really kind of bridging the gap and still reassuring ourselves of our mutual support. And that's what this video is supposed to provide. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.